Today we're talking about a very common class of medication that can make you nearly 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with dementia. Many patients are taking these drugs without realizing they are damaging their brains and accelerating the onset of a dementia diagnosis. And so what we're going to be covering today are the main culprits, the supporting evidence, and how to reverse this damage if it's happened to you. So jumping in, the class of medications you need to be aware of are the benzodiazepines. Common benzodiazepines include drugs like Xanax, Klonopin, Valium, Ativan, and temazepam. Why do these drugs cause dementia? Well, the benzodiazepines act on the GABA neurons in the brain. GABA is the neurotransmitter that slows down the brain. And because of this, it helps you relax and sleep. And that's why benzodiazepines are often prescribed for insomnia and anxiety. But there's a problem. Benzodiazepines also slow down the hippocampus, which is the small part of the brain responsible for making memories. And when you take these drugs long term, the hippocampus can shrink and your ability to form memories is disrupted. And this is why so many of my patients say things to me like, it feels like I have the memory of a 90-year-old, or that they hardly remember decades of their life, like their kid's childhood, because the drug had dulled their ability to consolidate those memories. Let's have a look at the most compelling evidence that these drugs cause dementia. The first study was done by he and colleagues in 2019, and they did a meta-analysis of 10 different studies, and they found that the risk of developing dementia if you were taking benzodiazepines was 50% higher. They also found that the risk was higher in patients who took longer-acting benzodiazepines like Valium, and also those who were taking them for longer periods of time. Another study by Gallagher and colleagues in 2012 looked at 1,134 men, and what they found was that taking benzodiazepines was associated with a 3.5 times higher risk of getting diagnosed with dementia. And there's one final study which is important and very reassuring, and that was by Wu and colleagues in 2011. And when they looked at a database of over 8,000 patients, what they found was that if you took benzodiazepines, the chance of you being diagnosed with dementia was 2.7 times higher. However, this actually decreased as people came off the medications. Within 3 months of being off the medications, the risk had lowered to being 2 times higher, and within 6 months to 1.5 times higher, and within 12 months to 1.4 times higher, and then all the way down to 3 years where they essentially did not have an increased risk of being diagnosed with dementia anymore. This study suggests that the dementia-inducing effects of benzodiazepines are reversible if you come off the medication. Well, what should you do if you want to reverse the damage? First, you need to taper off this medication, but do not do this without proper guidance and do not cold turkey yourself off these medications. Stopping benzodiazepines abruptly can literally kill you. People go into seizures and then they develop cardiorespiratory collapse and they die. It's one of the 2 drugs that can actually kill you during withdrawal: benzos and alcohol. Even still, if you come off these medications too quickly, the withdrawal is brutal. And so you need to find a doctor who knows how to safely taper you off these medications. Thankfully, we've made a video about this and it's going to be linked below. Now, if you're worried about the risk of dementia and you want to come off the medications, but you don't know what to do instead, here are some effective alternative strategies. One of my favorite strategies for insomnia is actually dietary modification. Overeating refined carbs can often cause insulin resistance. It's a huge problem in America. And this often leads to people waking up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. in an activated state. A great strategy is to minimize the amount of carbohydrates in the evening and prioritize a protein-rich meal, which will lead to steadier blood sugar over the evening and more restful sleep. Now, the next intervention is to cut out caffeine. And the reason I suggest removing one of our most beloved habits that is used by over 90% of Americans is that randomized controlled trials consistently show that caffeine increases anxiety and insomnia. For instance, Gardner found in his randomized controlled trial that if you consumed any more than 100 milligrams of coffee, that's a small coffee, after 9 a.m., you decreased the amount of time that you slept at night. In addition, Liu and colleagues found that consuming high amounts of caffeine increased your anxiety substantially, an effect size of between 2 to 3. This is a huge effect size. The next strategy is daily exercise. Humans evolved to be walking between 5 to 10 miles per day. And so what I tell my patients is to aim for at least 5,000 steps daily, ideally outside in the sun, to boost natural vitamin D. And you know why that's important? Well, Vitamin D is an important cofactor in the production of natural melatonin, so that's also going to boost your sleep. And finally, you want to engage in targeted psychotherapies because oftentimes anxiety can be triggered by work stresses or relationship issues. If you see a skilled therapist, they can help you resolve these root causes so you don't need to lean on medications to deal with those symptoms. But you might also be asking, Dr. Josef, what if I really need a medication in an emergency? What I would say is it's okay to use a benzodiazepine on an as-needed basis. Most patients have no problems if they take this medication once or twice a month. If you're looking for other alternatives for sleep, I would recommend as-needed melatonin, or for anxiety, I would recommend the medications propranolol or hydroxyzine. That's it for today. I hope this was helpful and take care of yourself. But if you want to learn more about a new revolution in mental health where doctors are using dietary interventions to reverse severe psychiatric conditions like major depressive disorder, bipolar, and schizophrenia, you're not going to want to miss this next video.